Good morning, everybody. It is 8:40 right now. Welcome back to Iowa Live. Lou and Jackie here, along with a good friend, Michael Jankins, as we're talking the world of bankruptcy and some things you can do to try to set yourself on the proper course for 2020.
Yeah, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and kind of creating a clean slate for those of us that might need it going into 2020 in the form of bankruptcy.
Yeah, so today I thought we'd just kind of talk about several different topics that kind of go all over the place, but they're kind of important. And so since we're starting out the new year, I think it would be a good idea for people to know how often they can file bankruptcy.
That's a good idea.
So often somebody has filed and they have all kinds of notions about how long they have to wait. And for years and years, and even now, a lot of people think it's 6 years, not really sure what, or 7 years.
7 years, that was what we heard, 7, yeah.
It's always 7 years.
Yeah.
The law prior to 2005 was actually 6 years. So I'm not sure where 7 ever came up. And then in 2005, when the bankruptcy laws were changed, well, then they extended that period to 8 years. So it's
so that means you can't file for bankruptcy unless there's an 8-year period of time from when you did the last one.
Right.
Okay.
For Chapter 7 bankruptcy. So if you file a case today on January was it
13th, yeah,
of 2020, you got to wait till 2028. It's a long way away.
Yeah.
Maybe the 7 came in with Chapter 7. They decided it all lined up with one another.
Together,
but
yeah.
is that kind of a big red flag if you're already looking to say, when's the next time I can file? Is that something you might need to look at?
Well, nobody's ever really thinking about that, fortunately. But there's just a lot of people that get into a jam again sometime in their life.
And what is the main reason for that? Because you think by hitting the reset button, you've learned your mistakes, and it sounds like people may have just repeated those mistakes.
Some people learn, some people don't. I've got clients that have filed once, sometimes more than that, and some of them are my own clients, or some that had filed with other attorneys, and I see them back, if they were my clients, with credit cards again, and I go, what happened? And they go, we just did it again.
Is there any kind of education that goes along with filing and going through the process?
Well, I mean, everyone's got to take a class after they file their case. It's a 2-hour class, so it isn't extensive, but you know, they do pick up a few pointers. And some people just have to resist the urge to want to buy things.
Do you think that's an arena that they should look into a little bit more if someone does file a bankruptcy, to give them more than just a 2-hour class is good starter, but just to get them so they're on firm ground so they can not do that again?
Well, it was a big deal to get any class, so I don't know that they'll ever be extending that beyond a 2-hour class, because just having that was a really big deal. And I think there's a lot of people don't even think that was really worthwhile to require people to do. I think so, but a lot of people think otherwise.
Okay.
But and other people, I've come to the conclusion, maybe having a sociology background, that some people just kind of have a cloud that follows them, because I've got other clients that just have bad luck. I mean, just bad things have happened to them in their lives, and they are beyond their control, whether it be medical or just they go work for a good company, get a good job, the company closes. They go to another company, the company closes, and it's none of their fault.
It's not their fault.
And they just have bad luck.
Okay, so Chapter 7, we're talking 8 years in between. Now, what about Chapter 7 and filing a different kind of bankruptcy?
Okay, so people that can't file Chapter 7 ordinarily because their income's too high, maybe they have to file Chapter 13. But if you filed the Chapter 7 before and you can't file again because your 8 years isn't up, you have an option to do Chapter 13. Under the old law before 2005, you could do it anytime. So if you had a Chapter 7 and you kind of flubbed up and 2 years later you needed a Chapter 13, well, you could do it and discharge debt, just like in a Chapter 7. So you could pay for 3 years of debt payments and still get rid of debt at the end of that case.
Okay.
Well, they changed that too. So now you have to wait at least 4 years if you want to file a Chapter 13 and actually discharge debt. Because you remember, when you're in a Chapter 13, you're making payments based on what your budget says you can afford to make to the court. And so in these kind of situations where we have people that kind of got into a jam again and can't do Chapter 7, sometimes our incomes aren't that great, But for the fact that they already filed, they could do another Chapter 7, at least under the income conditions. So sometimes we will have people making a very nominal payment. Maybe they're only paying $200 a month, and they've got $30,000 of debt again. So at the end of that 36-month payment program that they would be in, they're still going to get out of a whole bunch of debt. So, but you got to wait 4 years to do that. So sometimes we've got people that really did kind of get into a jam again too quickly, and they can't discharge debt, and they just need protection. They got people suing them, they got wage garnishments going on, and so if it's under 4 years, then they just get into the payment plan now. Now, we've had occasions where we urge people, well, just let your wages be garnished because we need to wait for that 4-year period if it's coming up. I mean, if it's like a year and a half away, that's a long time. But, you know, if it's 6, 7 months away, they just grin and bear it and till they can get into the Chapter 13 where they could actually discharge debt. So it's favorable to them because otherwise you just got to pay. And if at the end of it you didn't pay it all back, you still owe what's left. So that isn't a really great situation to be in either.
Speaking of pay, there's some things that you've taught us over the years that you don't want to do if you're getting ready to file for bankruptcy. And I know some of that is you don't want to pay off certain debts, correct?
Right. Sometimes it's a bad idea to, well, you usually like to pay your debts. And sometimes if you pay,
that's why it can get confusing.
Yeah, but if you're going to be filing bankruptcy, if you pay debts and too much before you file, that can kind of blow up. So in bankruptcy, there's a concept called a preferential payment. And it's kind of like what it sounds. You gave one person you owed better treatment than the other. You preferred them to all your other creditors. And so generally we're dealing with unsecured debt. So credit cards, medical bills, and such. And so if you've paid any of those more than $600 in a 90-day period before you file bankruptcy, that's looked at as a preference payment. So it doesn't mean that it's got to be a lump sum. Like if you paid $1,000, it could be an accumulation of payments, 300, 300, and 300 each month, and that could still be a preference. And the reason is a lot of times these creditors are putting pressure on someone to pay, and so if they're under pressure and the other creditors aren't really bugging somebody so much, so they're being leaned on and they pay Citibank credit card $1,000, well then the court's going to go and retrieve that money from Citibank and spread it out amongst everybody.
Really?
And so that's when it can be bad to pay one creditor. Now, it's not so bad for the person. They were going to pay somebody with that money. They would have been best not paying anybody if they were going to be filing bankruptcy. But Citibank's the one that's going to end up paying the price because they don't get to keep it, but they wouldn't have had it anyway if they just wouldn't have paid anybody.
So if you paid Citibank, we'll use that for an example, $1,000, and they go back and take that money back from Citibank, do you still owe Citibank $1,000?
No.
You're done with them?
Well, the debt's still gone.
The debt's still gone, okay.
And they get to share in the money along with everybody else. So that's just with normal creditors, regular creditors. So then there's another category of creditor that they call insiders. Generally, they're looking at family members, somebody with a close familial relationship with the person filing bankruptcy, but it also extends out to like business partners because there's a close relationship in that situation. So in the case of an insider payments, it's a year. So they look back 12 months. So if somebody's come into money and they had gotten a loan from grandma and they've been owing her for quite a long time, and all of a sudden they got their tax refund money and go, here's $5,000 back, Granny. That isn't always a good situation because now the bankruptcy court's going to ask Granny to give the money back.
Not a good thing.
Not a good thing.
So that isn't a real good thing
Lots of little things to know about. It can give you a clean slate and a wonderful way to start 2020, but there's some things you need to know. And that's why you got to talk to the expert. So how can they get in touch with you? You
can give us a call at 255-1855, and we're happy to answer your questions on the phone. You can find us on the internet at www.iowa-bankruptcylaw.com, or you can follow us on Facebook.
All right, there you go.
Good job, Michael. A lot of interesting things we never knew about. So, again, start 2020 in a positive manner. Let this guy help if need be. It is 10 minutes before.